Hello, and this is very delightsome for me to begin to speak to you, candidates on the Education and Training and Assessors qualification of the West Midlands Open College. I just want to run through a few things that will help us to write our portfolios and answer questions in the portfolios that we send out to you. And the topic for this presentation is how to answer questions that demand a certain command word, or describing or explain or state or list, identify. I just want us to go through these things so that there's a clarity on what you are expected to present as your answers. I've noticed that quite a number of candidates do find struggles in distinction between state, list, identify, describe, explain. So it's the foundation of giving an answer accurately if you understand the differences between these words. So today, follow me with this short presentation. Okay. I'm going to start with looking at a question which says identify. When you have a question saying identify methods of assessment, for example, what you are being asked in that question is simply to present them as a list. Number one, profession discussion. Number two, written examinations. Observation, examination of a product of work. That is listing. You're identifying, just make a list of them. If you've been given a specific number of things they want, for example, identify 5, make sure you list those 5 things. Or they want a minimum of 3. List 3 and above. Let's continue the discourse on using certain words like explain. I just discovered something. I will use, let me go for green or red. Red is okay. It says explain. Explain. You can see that on the screen. Explain. This is, now you're gonna give what? A bit more detail and the clarity, right? You understand this one, yeah? So in this, when you're asked to explain, you're going to give a bit more detail and clarity. In other words, make it clear. So I will ask the same question now. Explain why it's important to do an initial assessment. Here we go. It's the same question we had at first. Now here we're being asked to explain, not to identify, not to list. Now in the explanation, the way you start writing this, you must first of all identify. You say initial assessment. You underline that. That's my style, and I think it's good. You underline the word initial assessment. Then the next line, define what initial assessment is. You say initial assessment, this is a testing or a set of questioning that is given to a candidate at the beginning of a course, normally at enrollment. It could involve diagnostic sessions on mathematics, maybe English, communication, etc., and also the discipline in which they're coming into. And also there you include identifying their learning style. So it's a number of things you're going to be looking at. The purpose of assessment now, can you see that you're explaining? You've defined, you begin to give the features, characteristics. Now the purpose of doing this is to identify where the candidate is at when they join the course. The reason for this is that we want to know how to serve the candidate better by providing the appropriate level of materials, maybe signposting them at the appropriate level of the course for enrollment. Rather than going to level 5, they should go to level 4, or instead of going to level 5, they should go to a higher one because their knowledge is higher than what they're asking for. So we are talking about initial assessment. This way, we can now serve our candidates better with information they provide to us. And this is obtained at initial assessment. Therefore, this foundation tells me why it's important to do an initial assessment. In summary, now begin to summarize. I can do that. I've been asked to explain. I can in summary, to find the level at which the candidates are at now, to help them go at the right level on the course. Number 2, to help the tutor plan an inclusive learning. Number 3, or number 4, to be able to identify the learning style of the candidate so that each lesson, when it's prepared, is differentiated according to the learner needs. Thank you very much. So that way, you have tackled a question that asks you to explain. So, thank you. Let's continue now. This section will look at the actual word, which fantastic. Let me just get rid of that. Yes, excellent. We are doing all right. We are going to look at the word describe. Describe, how does it differ from explain? Not very much so, except that describe now demands you to give more details on the characteristics, features, and also several examples of how this applies. And one of the things we're going to look at in the next one is just to examine or use one question. How do we answer it? In describing, you're going to talk about the features, characteristics, for example, smell, for example, color, application, and the reasons why this exists. So it's a bit more detailed. It's just like explaining, but you put a bit more detail beyond the explanation. You put even more clarity to it. That's called describing something, or describing something you've been asked to describe. With this in mind, I want you to practice by looking at some of the questions in your assessment, in particular those people doing education and training and assessor qualifications, because you are becoming an assessor or a tutor. You will be looking at this kind of questions written by your students. How would you know they've got it right? It's by understanding the distinctions between these words. There's command words, there's words asking to identify, words asking you to explain and describe and summarize. Very critical for your job role. Make things clear to your candidates. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you later in the other sections of assessor qualifications and education and training on other topics. John Lukomona signing off, but see you online. Thank you.